Now, the Prime Minister has turned the top end into a political battleground after announcing plans for tax incentives to lure businesses to the Northern Territory.
The move matches similar overtures by the Coalition, but is it being taken seriously? Joining me now from Canberra is Richard Dennis. He's from the Australia Institute. Richard, good morning. Well, what do you make of all of this?
Well, hopefully no one is taking this too seriously. I mean, only a couple of months ago we were having a national debate about the way companies like Google and Apple were using Ireland as a tax haven. Now it seems we want to create our own onshore tax haven so that that companies can set up a headquarters in Darwin and pay a third less tax. So it seems amazing.
You'd argue on that basis there'd be no economic benefit trickling down to the people at the top end?
Well, look, I'm sure there'll be some benefit, especially in the property development and the accounting and the legal firms. But you know, what we've seen from overseas is these economic zones just basically attract existing economic activity into some arbitrary border. So yeah, we might see our big banks, for example, set up a Darwin-based subsidiary, and then they could pay a third less tax. That'd be great for everybody in Australia.
Yes, well, sort of. Why are the two major parties doing this then, in your view?
Oh, well, it's clearly about votes, but the alarming thing is just about how few votes we're talking about. I mean, there's 23 million people in Australia. There's 150 seats in the lower house. There's about 5 seats up in the north, and I think we should be looking at Indigenous disadvantage up there. We should be looking at the very big difficulties that people living in remote regions face. But you know, the idea that the national debate should revolve around shifting billions, tens of billions of dollars in infrastructure away from Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane to chase a few seats up north. It's politics gone mad.
And that's the point, and it's being reflected in the very parochial coverage given of this by state-based newspapers, that you're essentially potentially robbing Peter to pay Paul here, because there will be knock-on effects around the other states and territories.
Well, that's the absolute plan, is to rob the other states. You know, people in New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland will continue paying the same rates of tax, but rather than spend it on the infrastructure that those cities need, the proposal by both parties, let's be clear, there's bipartisan consensus for what I'd say is one of the worst ideas in decades. There's bipartisan consensus that people in the southern states should continue to pay taxes at the same rate, so we can go and build new infrastructure so that people can pay less tax up there. I mean, Sydney and Melbourne are creaking under the weight of rapid population growth, and now we want to go and build infrastructure for imaginary cities.
Richard Dennis calling it as he sees it. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Now let's go to more of this week in politics. Crib notes, gaffes, sex appeal. It's certainly been rather colourful on the election trail this week. Let's take a look back at week 2.